Have you ever wondered why a woman who once seemed casual suddenly starts acting differently the moment she feels she could lose you? Why does she become more attentive, more invested, more emotionally present when she senses that your attention is no longer guaranteed? You've been there. You gave everything, your time, your energy, your focus. You replied instantly. You made yourself available. You tried to prove your value. Yet somehow, the more you chased, the less interested she became. Then something changed. Maybe you got busy. Maybe you stopped texting first. Maybe you focused on your own goals for a while. And suddenly she started reaching out. She started asking questions. She seemed nervous about where she stood with you. If that experience confused you, you're not alone. I'm glad you're here because today we're going to uncover the 5 behaviors women almost always display when they become fearful of losing a man they genuinely value. And I'll warn you now, the final one is incredibly powerful. It can change everything fast, and almost no one uses it correctly. I'm here with you on the Stoic Way, where we uncover the real psychology that creates desire. First, let's clear something up. Most men believe attraction is built through effort alone. More texts, more compliments, more reassurance, more availability. But attraction doesn't work that way. This was never your fault. Nobody taught you this. The problem was never that you weren't enough. The problem was sequencing. You tried to give certainty before attraction had space to grow. You offered commitment before curiosity. You offered attention before investment. And when that happens, something important disappears. The emotional tension that makes attraction come alive. Female attraction is often less conscious than most people realize. It operates through deep patterns, mental shortcuts, subconscious scanning. Evolutionary psychology suggests that people naturally pay more attention to things they value and fear losing. Not because they're manipulative, because they're human. When a woman sees a man with purpose, direction, emotional control, and options, her mind starts asking a powerful question. What if he's no longer available to me? That's when behavior changes. That's when investment appears. And once you understand the hidden signals, you stop chasing and become the man women want to win over. Let's start with the first behavior. When a woman fears losing you, she begins seeking your attention more often. Not always dramatically. Sometimes it's subtle. A random message, an unexpected reaction to your story, a reason to continue a conversation that could have ended hours ago. Why? Because attention has value, and value increases when it becomes selective. This is where the first trigger comes in: selective attention. A man with a full life naturally cannot give unlimited attention to everyone. His focus is invested carefully. You don't need to ignore her. You don't need games. You simply need a life worth living. Imagine you're working on a project you've been excited about for months. You're at the gym, building a business, learning a skill, living with purpose. Instead of dropping everything the moment she texts, you reply when appropriate, calmly, normally, without panic. She notices, not because you're playing hard to get, because you're genuinely engaged with life. Scarcity creates awareness. That is the principle. The second behavior appears shortly afterward. She starts looking for reassurance. Not direct reassurance, emotional reassurance. She wants to know where she stands. She asks questions. She pays attention to your schedule. She notices who you're spending time with. She becomes more curious about your world. This happens because uncertainty activates emotional focus. And that brings us to the second trigger: controlled unpredictability. Not chaos, not inconsistency, just enough mystery to remind people that your life doesn't revolve around their expectations. You might surprise her with an unexpected invitation. You might mention a new hobby she didn't know about. You might pursue goals without constantly announcing them. them. The human brain loves rewarding uncertainty. Dopamine spikes when outcomes aren't completely predictable. That's why certainty comforts us, but mystery captivates us. Stay grounded, remain authentic, keep growing. Mystery follows naturally. The third behavior is one most men completely overlook. She starts listening more carefully. Suddenly, she remembers details, small things you mentioned weeks ago, your favorite drink, a story about your childhood, a challenge you're currently facing. This happens because emotional investment sharpens attention. When people care, they listen differently. And this introduces the third trigger, intentional listening. One of the most attractive qualities a man can develop, because almost nobody does it well. The next time she tells you about an important event, remember it. Ask about it later. Not to impress her, to understand her. Let's say she mentions being nervous about a presentation. 3 days later, you ask how it went. Simple, powerful, rare. People remember how seen they felt. That's the secret. If this is making sense so far, hit subscribe and join the Stoic Way community. It helps more men learn what they were never taught. Now let's move deeper. The fourth behavior emerges when her emotional investment grows stronger. She becomes more responsive to your moods. Your energy affects her. If you're excited, she becomes curious. If you're distant, she notices. If you're focused, she pays attention. This is where many men accidentally sabotage attraction. They become emotionally reactive. They panic. They over-explain. They seek validation. But women are often drawn towards something different. Masculine presence. That's the fourth trigger. Grounded energy. Calm confidence. Emotional stability under pressure. Not dominance. Not arrogance. Presence. Imagine a disagreement happens. Instead of becoming defensive, you stay composed. You listen. You speak clearly. You don't need to win. You don't need to prove yourself. You remain centered. That communicates strength more effectively than any clever line ever could. Calm is power. Never forget that. A woman who fears losing you often begins investing emotionally because she senses that stability. She sees you as an anchor rather than another source of chaos, and that changes everything. The fifth behavior is fascinating. She starts trying harder to create positive experiences with you. She laughs more, teases more, initiates more. She wants emotional momentum. Why? Because attraction thrives in emotional contrast, which leads us directly into the fifth trigger. Emotional challenge. Many men think attraction grows through constant agreement. It doesn't. Polarity creates energy. A playful tease, a confident disagreement, a lighthearted challenge. These moments create emotional movement. Imagine she says she's unbeatable at a game. Instead of instantly agreeing, you smile and say, "That's a bold claim. I guess I'll have to test that." Playful, confident, engaging, no hostility, no ego, just tension and fun. Attraction needs movement. Still water becomes stagnant. Now let's go even deeper into what happens when her fear of losing you becomes genuine. You'll notice something unexpected. She starts offering more of herself, more honesty, more openness, more vulnerability. This isn't an accident. Trust follows investment. And that's why the sixth trigger matters so much. Calibrated vulnerability. Notice the word calibrated, not emotional dumping, not trauma flooding, not playing the victim. Healthy vulnerability. The ability to reveal something real without collapsing into it. You might share a lesson from a difficult period of your life. You might talk about a challenge you've overcome. You might reveal a meaningful goal that matters deeply to you, but you do it from strength, not from desperation. Women often feel safer opening up when they see a man capable of emotional honesty without emotional dependency. Strength and openness together, that's the balance. And when she senses she could lose a man with that balance, her investment rises significantly because it's rare, very rare. Now let's talk about something many people misunderstand: physical connection. When attraction grows and emotional investment deepens, a woman who fears losing you often becomes more comfortable with physical closeness. Not because she's trying to manipulate you, because emotional bonds naturally seek expression. Which brings us to the seventh trigger: gradual physical touch. Respectful, natural, appropriate, nothing forced, nothing rushed. Human beings are wired for connection. Research consistently links positive physical touch with increased oxytocin production, often called the bonding hormone. The key word is gradual. A brief touch during a laugh, holding hands, a warm hug, small moments, earned moments, moments that match the stage of the relationship. Never push, never force. Connection grows best when it feels safe. Respect creates attraction. Pressure destroys it. Remember that. Now we're approaching something even more important, because the 5 behaviors we've discussed are not random. They're signals. Signals of emotional investment. Signals of perceived value. Signals that she sees you as someone worth keeping in her life. And that's where many men make a critical mistake. The moment they see those signals, they stop growing. They stop leading themselves. They stop building their purpose. They become comfortable. Comfort is wonderful for relationships, but complacency is dangerous. A woman's fear of losing you should never become your goal. Your goal is becoming a man you respect. Because here's the truth. The men women struggle to forget aren't necessarily the richest, not necessarily the most attractive, not necessarily the most charismatic. They're often the men who possess a combination of grounded energy, purpose, emotional intelligence, and self-respect. Men who don't need validation to function. Men who choose connection rather than chase it. Men who understand human psychology without abusing it. Real tools, not tricks. When you develop masculine presence, you become memorable. When you use emotional challenge playfully, you create polarity. When your attention is selective because your life has purpose, you become valuable. When you listen intentionally, people feel understood. When you're vulnerable without becoming dependent, trust grows. When physical touch develops naturally, bonds deepen. When a little mystery remains, attraction stays alive. These aren't manipulation tactics, they're reflections of healthy value. That's why they work. A woman who fears losing you is often responding to something she feels, not something you forced, not something you performed, something real, something consistent, something earned. And here's the part most men need to hear. You do not need perfection. You don't need perfect looks, perfect timing, perfect confidence, perfect words. You need understanding. You need awareness. You need strategy. The kind of strategy built on truth, not performance, not pretending, not manipulation. Think about your past experiences. How many times did you assume attraction meant giving more? How many times did you believe effort alone would solve everything? How many times did you ignore your own goals because someone else's approval became your priority? Now imagine a different path. You wake up focused. You pursue your mission. You take care of your body. You build your future. You remain emotionally steady. You communicate honestly. You connect intentionally. And because your life is full, your attention becomes valuable. Because your standards are clear, your presence becomes attractive. Because your identity is strong, your relationships become healthier. That is the shift. That is the transformation. You stop asking, how do I make her afraid of losing me? And you start asking, how do I become a man whose presence genuinely matters? The first question leads to manipulation. The second leads to growth. Choose growth every time. because the strongest attraction is never manufactured. It's inspired. It emerges when a woman sees a man who respects himself, values his purpose, and shares his attention intentionally. A man who remains calm under pressure. A man who listens. A man who grows. A man who leads himself first. That's the man women invest in. That's the man they don't want to lose. And most importantly, that's the man who doesn't lose himself trying to keep someone else. Take that lesson with you. Use these ideas with respect and intention. Remember that attraction is emotional, human, and deeply connected to how people experience value. Build yourself first. Let everything else grow from there. You don't need perfection. You need strategy. You don't need tricks. You need understanding. You don't need to chase. You need to become. That is the Stoic way. If you're ready to stop chasing and start becoming the man women genuinely desire, subscribe to the Stoic Way now. Turn on notifications because the next one will shift your reality again.